Good morning. I couldn't help but come by and talk about this topic today because this is something that has just absolutely been, top of mind for me. This is an amazing leadership topic, and I wanted to dig into it. So, what's the difference between the basics and the minimums? The basics and the minimum, and how does this life-changing principle affect you? So, good morning. It's Adam Contos here, Leadership Factory. Make sure you check out the group's Leadership Factory on Facebook and LinkedIn. I know a lot of you are on here. I'm broadcasting live on those right now, in fact. And this is really, truly a question that we have to ask ourselves because ultimately, a lot of times we're engaging in the wrong things in life. And you might think, okay, well, is this some woo-woo BS? No, the reality is that this is the secret to success when it comes to professional athletes, high performing business people, business owners, things like that. And you have to ask yourself this question: am I doing the basics or am I doing the minimum? And you think, oh, the basics, that's, amateur work, whatever it might be, and no matter what I'm doing. But the reality is the basics are what creates success in your life. The minimum is what gets you by. And we mistake the two for each other all the time. Think about that. And let's use exercise as an example. It's an easy one. I just came from the gym, wearing my gym clothes. And I was looking around this morning and it hit me. I'm like, gosh, there are people that are doing the minimum here instead of doing the basics. So what's the minimum? The minimum is what you need to do to check the box to get by and say, hey, I did it. But the basics are doing the fundamentals really, really well. The basics are doing the fundamentals really, really well. And what we end up doing is we end up writing down the basics, but doing the minimum in life. And that might be with our relationships. It might be with our exercise and our health, whatever. Yeah. Have you ever heard somebody say, oh, they're in great shape, even though, somebody came down with a horrible illness or had something bad happen to them? I've had a lot of friends who've had heart attacks or whatever. And you're like, oh, they were in great shape. No, they weren't. They weren't in great shape. The reality is when you take and you look at who's doing the basics, it's the top 10% of people. People do it. The other 90% are doing the minimum. And unfortunately, 70, like you take leadership, for instance, how many people are practicing the basics versus the minimum in leadership? Well, 70 some percent, it's like 76% of leaders say that they're in the top 10% of leaders. It's impossible. So, anyhow, here's my question for you. Write down what are the basics for your business. So let's say a lot of people on here sell real estate. What are the basics for selling real estate? It's to spend time every day, probably about 2 hours, contacting existing and future customers. Okay. So, reaching out, driving up, getting face to face with talking to customers. That's a basic. Another one is becoming an expert, which is learning and giving constantly. And then another basic is reviewing your current business that's in process. And a basic also is this, doing video. So we've gone over that before. What's a minimum? Surfing Facebook, saying you've done something, going to Starbucks, hanging out, going, I put my sign up on my laptop at Starbucks. And maybe that's giving you a little bit of business, but the minimum that you feel like you're actually checking the box during the day. So another example on health, I mentioned I was at the gym watching people do the minimum. They would go in there and they would just, put some weight on something and work a machine or something like that. But instead, what are the basics? The basics are what muscle group are you working out? How many sets and reps are you going to do? And are you working hard enough where those last few on each one are really, really difficult? Are you doing the minimum or the basics? Basics are working hard. The minimum is doing the least necessary. So think about that. Write it down. What are the basics and what are the minimums for what you're doing? Throw away the minimums, stay away from them, and do the basics. This is such a powerful concept. Michael Jordan, Tiger Woods, Peyton Manning. I mean, you name all these, Tom Brady, whoever it is, the greatest of all time in sports, they worked on the basics, not do the minimums. So anyhow, that's what I got for you today. Basics. Have a great day, and We'll see you next time. Oh, by the way, if you're still here, make sure you click on this box below, download the 3 key leadership secrets. It's a great download. Take care. Bye.